I'm Ignacio Abella, and this is Father Christian Saenz, and we came up with the idea of the Camino de Santiago about 2 years ago in the summer of 2017. So we're going to go over our itinerary, which is right here. Okay. ¿Cómo la cosa? Me cambiaste la seña. All right, so.
Lo verde para arriba.
So we started right here in Roncesvalles and obviously ended in Santiago. So there were 31 of us, including Father Christian and Father Paul Rourke from Georgetown. Every stop we had a conserje or a conserjes, husband and wife, who took care of all the activities for the day. Okay, so we're going to start with Father Christian, and then we're going to have the first conserje. Okay, we're going to try to be as brief as possible, and then if you have any questions, just pop in.
So we'll do a recap of the places that we went to. A recap of the places that we went to, as you see, begins almost at the border of France, and we went to the other corner of what is the continent of Spain. In old times they said this was Finisterre, which is over here, the end of the continent. And so it's also symbolic that Santiago Apostol, in a certain way, brings the Word of God all the way to the end of the European continent, which at that time was the end of the world, was the world's end. So we follow the path of those apostles and of that evangelizer of Spain. And so if I think we all remember, those of us who went on this trip, we'll have our starting point. And many of you was the airport, but really we didn't begin until we arrived in Roncesvalles. And remember, it was pretty not much to see really, because that's about it, right? That was like the whole thing. Well, there was plenty to eat. That we had down, that was working. But remember when we looked, I mean, we had the old medieval church in there as well, and well, that was it. I think that was it. It was basically the church and the hotel we were in. So that was on our first day, and we took our walk as well. And so that first day was kind of getting to know each other, unpacking, getting ready for what was ahead. And that's when everything really began. 790 kilometers, and we walked over 100 of those kilometers to get to Santiago. And so everyone there is smiling, nobody knows what they're in for. And so why don't we leave it to nuestro primer conserje to remind us a little bit about what it was to be on that Camino.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, okay, I'm Joe Diaz. My wife is not able to be here, and 3 of our granddaughters that went with us to this Camino. They're at school tomorrow, and they need to be studying and go to bed early. I was fortunate that 2 years ago, we did the Camino Ignacio with Father Christian, Father Eddie, Ignacio Lourdes, and 2 other granddaughters. So, in a way, Ignacio said, well, we're the people that have experience. Well,
So who do we have here for the Camino Ignaciano?
Camino Ignacio,
Stand up.
okay, we have people from Camino Ignacio, and we have people over there. Okay.
So these are alumni of the Camino.
It's completely different from the other Camino. In Roncesvalles, like the father was saying, I was surprised when I was looking and trying to find out where I was in charge. Roncesvalles has a total of 31 people living in that village. And to make reservation, there is only one hotel. Hotel Roncesvalles. They do have a hostel for pilgrims, and they also have like lodge house. They also have 2 restaurants. So in a way, it was great for me. Very small town. We got together. We met everybody, people from Washington DC area, and in the afternoon we visited the Royal Father, you know, the church, you know, but you know, it's the, what's the name of it? You know, the Colegiata. And we went to the museum, and then after we had a mass celebrated by Father Christian and Father Paul. Father Paul is from the Washington DC area. And then we did receive the blessing of the pilgrim. The important thing is, Roncesvalles is only 4 kilometers as the crow flies from France. About between 9 and 10,000 people started Roncesvalles del Camino. So we were privileged that they gave us a blessing. So, and it was a great experience. To me, I've done both Camino. It was in my bucket list when I was a teen. And as I grew older, you know, I decided, well, I got to do it. But I do recommend everybody here, if you have not done Camino de Santiago or Camino Ignacio, go ahead and do it. Great experience. The bond that you get from the people is amazing. People that you don't know and you become friends. I never knew Joe, I didn't know Carlos, and we became like family, you know. And I'm glad, you know, I'm going to be serving the Camino Matrimonial with Joe and Anna. So I do recommend for you guys. Thank you. Have a great evening.
And so on that, the walk that day was also very packed. We did a kind of a warm-up, and that's one thing that we didn't do when we did the Camino Ignaciano. We started little by little. We walked, I think it was about 2 miles the first day, then 4 miles the next day, then 5 miles the next day, then we took a break, and then we continued. Then it got serious, and then the smiles go away. But we're still smiling in here, and so one of the stops along the way bringing us around was this area that we saw, Llorente and Puente de la Reina, which is a very fascinating area. And here we have us crossing the medieval bridge that the pilgrims had crossed for so many centuries already, at least since the 1200s, right there. And in that city, in Puente de Reina, ahí está Puente de la Reina, right there. Well, ahí está el rey, no el puente. We started walking that morning. It was a little bit stormy. Remember, we were in the area of Logroño in that area. But we saw some beautiful sights. There's another almost 1,000-year-old church that we had our reflection with Father Paul that guided us on the day's meditation, and we had other Caminantes along the way as well. But it was a beautiful scenery, and as we went in and ran into another Jesuit, an Italian Jesuit that studied with all of us in Rome, that also helped present the churches and the bridge in the town that we were there in Puente de la Reina. And so we had moved on to our lunch, and usually our day ended with lunch, at least the walking day ended there, and we would proceed into the next city, Logrom. Sí. Llorente is Basque, which means mil puertas. Cien puertas. And so it took us to Logroño, and we had our consejo who would like to give us some reflections on that day.
La Madre Patria, sí. So for those who don't know me, my name is Carlos Muñiz, and my wife Alicia and I went as a 25th happy wedding anniversary. It was a month before. It was a very nice pilgrimage. And what Joe said is exactly right. It's a once in a lifetime experience for us. That first day, and just going back a little bit, that was July 15th, Sunday, July 15th, and so that morning we walked. It was our first time walking, and we did about 4.5 miles walking. Which here is a long distance, over there it's a small distance, not that much of a distance, but it became a big challenge because all of us walked, and not all of us could walk. And I was the conserje, so I had to stay in the back. And Santiago and I became really good friends in that walk. because Santiago did a great effort to complete that walk, a tremendous effort. Which to me, personally, that day is when I figured 3 things, the 3 P's as I call it for the Camino. Perseverance, patience, and it's a personal experience. Everybody's Camino is personal. Not only personal from what you feel, but personalized to even what you walk and what you do in the Camino. So the 3 P, the patience one was one that surprised me. I was like, have you be patient? Because some people were not patient that day. It was kind of tough. It was really tough. Like, hey, come on, we gotta get going. We got a schedule really tight. We gotta go here, we gotta go here. So, anyways, beautiful walk. And as Father Christian said, we had some friends on the way, some animals on the way, that cattle that we met. The Unate was a mystical experience at Octagonal Church. It's a very old church. It was a quick visit, but it was always a mystical kind of experience. In Puente La Reina, we also did visit la iglesia de Crucifijo. So we were there, and then we did the Puente Romano. We come to Logroño, and for those, I don't know how many of you are, as you know, I'm a big soccer fan. For those who know, Father Llorente and I always have this connection. That was the day of the final of the World Cup. So we had to get to Logroño at a certain time so I could at least watch that part of it in the hotel, which we were able to do. And then we went to the church. Go to the next slide, which is la cathedrals de la Santa María de la Redonda. And something interesting happened when we were at the mass. It was at 7 o'clock at night. Hail fell. It was hail. Big storm. Big storm, and in fact, I think it was right after the homily. And this is a big church, right? It's cathedral, right? So we're there, and it's 7 o'clock. It's not nighttime because in Spain, it's like 9:30, 10 o'clock at night before it becomes nighttime. And you hear this, it sounded like water was coming into the cathedral. We're about to get rushed. I mean, wow. Yeah, it was an unbelievable feel. We're all looking at each other like, are we going to survive this? And so it was, the hail and the rain at the end. And then that night we spent there eating tapas in the restaurant section that I have there, Calle Llorente, which is a very popular place to have tapas. So that was the experience that we had in Camino.
And so we continued from Logroño that morning, and we drove off to the next stop. The starting point was called San Antonio, and we were walking along the way. Well, as we saw, the weather was more or less actually to our favor, because it wasn't too hot, it wasn't too cold, it was just right. And along that way, we saw some interesting things, poetry that people leave along the way. We ended up in a beautiful place, I think one place that's unforgettable for everybody who went there, to Santo Domingo de la Calzada, which is this beautiful church in the middle of nowhere, really, is where it was that we saw. We had perhaps one of the best experiences in there, that we were guided by one of the canons, one of the fathers from that church that was there. And then we finished...
It's the person between Christian and Father Paul.
And we finished our day in Burgos with its magnificent cathedral, and the Mass in another magnificent chapel. And we finished the night partying in very Spanish style. And so, Marcos, perhaps you can tell us a little bit about that day.
Okay, my name is Marcos Casanova, and my wife Yolma. We enjoy very much that Camino with this, group, wonderful group of people, brothers and sisters, that we together went through this beautiful part of Spain. There are two things that I remember from our, the section that we were in the Conserve in Burgos, or toward Burgos. The first one was the church of Santo Domingo de la Calzada. Very peculiar cathedral, not a church, it's a cathedral. The first one, as the priest, I forgot his name.
Merino.
Ignacio Merino.
Okay, he explained the whole, cathedral to us, and it was very interesting. One of the things that he explained was that Santo Domingo de la Calzada was never declared a saint by the church through the regular channels. It was by acclamation of the people at that time, and his tomb is there in the cathedral. Number two, very peculiar in that church is where they have, inside the church, a chicken and a rooster.
Real chicken.
Yeah, real chicken and rooster. And while we were going to the cathedral, the rooster was, doing, times. It was, you know, it was surreal, really. But there is a whole story that is very long, and I don't want to take the time. But there is a whole story about that. And then arriving, the second thing that I, remember arriving in Burgos, besides the beautiful mass that we had at the cathedral, was food. Burgos was one of the days, a few days that we had full lunch during the day, and then, a heavy dinner at night. That was, I thought that I was going to die that night. But we had, a beautiful surprise because Ignacio had a surprise for us, and that was the tuna from Victoria?
Right, Victoria.
From Victoria. About 6 of them it was, a whole bunch of them. They came from Victoria and they sang and we danced, and I had the opportunity to dance with some, as I said, some rusas. I don't know, maybe it was a wine, but all of a sudden there was no pollution. So that was wonderful. It was a fun day. I don't know how we did it, how to go to that dinner after walking, about 4, 5, 6, 7 miles and being so tired, but we had to keep going and we had a lot of fun.
Can I say something since I was Fonseca's wife that day? I couldn't start walking that day. I got sick. In the morning when I got up, I couldn't walk. And I started walking in the second etapa. But that was a very humbling experience for me because I'm a little competitive.
Yes.
And not being able to walk was really something, that made me just think, I need to be here, and it was beautiful. That time that I was in the bus, I was with Joe and Santiago, and they were very kind and very caring, and I had the opportunity to walk by myself for a little bit and take pictures of, the silly little flowers, not the grandiose, the things that we wanted to see. So I thought, it was a learning experience, or a humbling experience for me. So I appreciated that very much. And Joe is not a good photographer. He cut my head off all of the pictures. So he's not, should not be ever be.
Okay, so here is a brochure de Santo Domingo de la Calzada. Imagínense que you have un gallinero and there's un gallo y una gallina back there, and then you're praying, and then all of a sudden you hear the... And there's a history why the gallo y la gallina are there. Very long story.
And so that day we finished in Burgos and we left again in the morning to the next leg, because we had 2 retreats.
Yeah, you can take the brochures.
We had 2 pilgrimages in one. We were actually doing the pilgrimage of the Camino de Santiago, but also we were going to the birthplace of Father Llorente. And so that morning we were on our walk and nos metimos en tremendo rollo, because we found out what is el rollo de justicia, this structure we see in here, that Fermin was telling us that this is where in medieval times they would post all the laws and the orders of the king, and if you were caught or if you were punished, if you were sentenced for anything, they tie you up to el rollo de justicia and you'd stay there all day. People might throw tomatoes at you or whatever. That was the punishment. Hence the phrase meterse en un rollo. And so we were here and we noticed, like right behind it, that there's a plaque dedicated to a Jesuit, because we were in the town of Boadilla. And that's where one of the first Jesuits, along with St. Ignatius, was born, Bobadilla. Okay. And that's the church where he was baptized in there. And so we were in the town, and that was practically the whole town was a church. Because we walked out, and it was just fields. We were going through fields in the morning. And I think that's the day that we did like 4.5 miles. So that was our warm-up. And we concluded in this town with a beautiful Romanesque church that was found there. And then also this canal that they had dug up in Canal de Castilla, which connects certain cities in Spain, and other things that we saw along the way. And so for that day, who was our Ephraim?
My wife and I were. Is this on? Yes. It's not.
My wife and I, I'll speak louder. So my wife and I were conserjes for this day when we went to Father Llorente's home place. And I will admit, I'm part of a small team that's doing some research on the early years of our founder, a priest by the name of Felipe Rey de Castro, also a Spaniard, and his successor, Padre Llorente. And as I was doing that research, I learned that they were born walking distance, both of them, in different cities, but walking distance from the Camino de Santiago. So that was sort of like the first sign that I had that the Spirit was blowing in my back. Okay, he's blowing in my back to make this research work out. And so, as Father said, Ignacio really, when I told him this, he was good enough to arrange the trip to this day, to this birth site, Mansilla Mayor del Padre Llorente. And I separately had arranged 7 different visits throughout. It was like a second and third pilgrimage, but meeting people in different places. As a result of that, I got sick early on, just from concern that I would actually meet them, because I didn't know, they would follow through on their promise to meet me. The fact that I even had people to go meet was a gift of the Holy Spirit, because we had no contact with our founder, who was left from his family, nothing, but it all fell into place. All right, and it didn't keep me from being sick the whole trip. But what I wanted to say is that, as we were told by our directors, the trip didn't really start in Rosenvalles. It started in your home, okay? Before you even left on the trip, you were on the trip to Santiago. And for about half of us, that included a stop in Lourdes, which has nothing to do, other than this in France, which is where this particular old route, French route starts in France, but not in Lourdes. But that was my wife's condition for coming along with me, is she had to go to Lourdes. So you heard what St. Paul said, so I said, do what she says. So we did. Do you want to say something about Lourdes? No. She had a very moving experience there, and that's the reason she went. Father sort of described the day, I'm going to talk about my most important moment in the whole trip, which was tied to my secondary mission, really, more than the Camino de Santiago. And that was that we had about an hour's drive between Burgos and Mansilla Mayor. So I had planned to play a CD with pictures of Father Llorente and one of his talks, Conociendo a Dios, or I think it was. I don't remember it because we never played it. When I was about to propose it, one of the agrupados, who didn't know I was going to show that, and I didn't know he was going to do this either, he said, hey, before you show that, can I give a little witness about Father Llorente? Which he did. And then every other agrupado got up after him, spontaneous, right? Those who were there remember, unasked, and gave witness to Father Llorente, including the wife of Carlos Munoz, who was not a agrupado, but she's very close to Father Llorente also. So that, for me, that was another gift of the Holy Spirit. It was unexpected. We didn't show the CD, but it didn't really matter, okay? Because that was really the point for me on that trip. I was just getting confirmation that this was the right thing to do.
You mentioned the name.
Okay, so this is Llorente's family. I wish I could tell you all that. Basically, these are our nieces of his. Okay, 1, 2, 3. But I'm not good with names or with memory. So these are all close, the closest relatives. They all met him. Okay, obviously. That wasn't the case for the other priest. People that I met with did not know that older priest because he was a previous generation. You know the names. Why don't you go through the names here?
I think Joaquin is the oldest one.
Y Joaquín tiene el hostal. Y tiene un hostal en Mansilla Mayor.
And he was our contact. He was our contact to set up this part of the trip. I left out an important part. When we got to Mansilla Mayor, we went to Mass with the whole family, which is shown in that picture there. Mostly, almost 80% of the family that was going to meet us. And from there, they took us to the house of Llorente. First you go by a street called Llorente Street. Well, it's not Father Llorente. It's another Father Llorente. It's his older brother, which is really, up to this point, but no, we got there, that was their hero, okay? The older Llorente. So, yeah, Segundo Llorente. So the street has that name on it, and the house is right there. Okay, and they laid out a spread for us. The whole family took us into their home, and aside from giving us a tour of where Llorente, slept and everything, I guess I'm going over time, but let me tell these two little stories about Llorente, which I picked up on the trip. And this is part of the story. I brought into his biography. Okay, he said the fellow who walked us around said when the time came to the parents died, and then they had to decide what to do with the house. And of course, they were going to do it, in equal parts. Llorente, a good Jesuit by that time, all the time, but was already a Jesuit at that time, he said, I don't want anything. I just want the right to sleep in this bed every time I'm here. The bed that he was born in, I grew up in. I just want to sleep in this bed while I'm alive. And of course, they still had a house, so they lived up to that promise. The other little story that I think was told to my wife, is that, maybe you've heard this other one, he said that he was a priest because of the flies, las moscas. You're a priest because of las moscas. He said, yes, when we were young, we had two choices. We could go to school, which is a Catholic school, right? And the schooling was started by the Catholics. We go to like a monastery and be taught by the nuns in a school, or you could work the field. And I chose to work the field. I didn't think I had any vocation. I decided to work the field. But I could not stand those cows whipping their tails and getting those moscas out of their face all the time. So I couldn't take that every day, day after day. And I said, I want to go to school. So I'm a priest because of la mosca, he said.
Okay, yo creo, I think, Carlos and Efraín, I think Joaquín, Carlos, Amando, and José Luis are all sobrinos.
Sí.
I saw the ladies
And
here.
Jesus,
One, two,
and the
three.
girls and ladies too.
No, the one on the end and this two. This is Purísima. Even their names. Purísima Llorente.
Purificación.
No, Purificación Llorente y Purificación Llorente. Le dicen Puri y a esta le dicen Purina. Okay, so she wasn't there. I met her.
And this one is a nun.
This one is a nun. Here's another quick story. I almost shouldn't tell the story, but I'm going to tell the story. I didn't know if I would see her, but she's not in a cloister. So at that night when we went to Leon, which is at the end of a point to stay in Leon, the family somehow got her to the hotel. And so I was able to spend like an hour and a half with her. And she already knew why I was there. And so I said, I don't have to explain. No, you don't have to explain it. She says, but let me just say that when I heard that you were thinking about Llorente being a saint, and I said, stop right there. Okay, don't say anymore. Sister, you were not served by him as we were. So you have a different idea of him. No, don't get me wrong. I know he's a saint, but a saint here on earth? And I said, well, just pray on it. I had something to give to all the people I met there. So I said, just pray on it. But, being a sister, because of, what she thinks of holiness and so on, she couldn't see her uncle being a saint, at least. But I said, sleep on it. This is just an introduction. We'll be back. And we'll talk to you sometime. But she surprised me.
Jesus is the one who keeps the house.
Right, yeah, he has the house.
Que es básicamente like a museum.
Yeah.
And then this one is Amando, and I believe I told the people here, Carlos, the one in the middle, was very interested in what happening to the agrupación. They want to come when the new house is built, is finished, etc., etc.
And he lives in Valencia. He lived in Valencia and he worked as a police.
Right.
Police,
So
retired.
really, we were giving the red carpet treatment.
Yeah, so just some real quick points. In the church, we got to see where Padre Llorente got baptized, Abella donde lo bautizaron. That was very, very memorable. The house, as Efrain mentioned, you know, and as Ignacio mentioned, he left it pretty much the rooms as they were. So we went to the Llorente. So we asked him to go. Can we see Armando's room? And he said, yeah. And we saw it, and it was like, for those who saw the room here, with the room that he had, you know, not here, excuse me, in the album, in this game, very similar, very simple. You know, what you expect from Armando Llorente. The thing about the street. Because when we had dinner, we had lunch with them, you know, that was one of the themes of theirs was, hey, we consider Saint Segundo Llorente, the firstborn. Armando was the sixth of 9, right? And so for us, Segundo is that, you know, you don't have to compare both. I mean, they both live like these saints. But then it was understood because where did Segundo Llorente go? He was 40 years in Alaska. Where did Armando go? To Cuba. So for them, it's like, Alaska, Cuba? Oh, come on, really? I mean, back in the, you know, but of course, we know what Llorente had to do in order to, you know, when he faced in Cuba and what he had to do to just get the Aqua going. So, when the thing about the street sign, I told him, you know, Armando Llorente has a street sign also named in Miami. They didn't know. Oh, really? Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. But anyways, then my wife and I were very fortunate because Puri over here, and Jose Luis actually joined us in Leon, and they gave us a little bit of a tour. So we were able to meet with them, and Jose Luis is very involved in the church. I mean, he knew everybody. He knew everybody in the cathedral. He said that was
Luis, ¿alguno de esos familiares ha venido a Miami?
Sí, cuando murió el padre Llorente, yo creo que una de las sobrinas, sí, la Puri de la mano derecha,
La última, right?
Ella, según los hermanos, ella era la favorita de Llorente.
No, pero la que vino aquí, ¿cuál fue? ¿No fue la que estaba en medio?
Puri, la última la derecha.
And so we finished our day in León, some of us with some members of the Llorente family visiting this magnificent cathedral, probably one of the most impressive that I've seen when I was there. And it was a very interesting town. We had run into other people that we knew along the way there. Por casualidad, just in the street, there's one of the buildings by Gaudí that he built in León as well. And just taking in the sights and the places in there. And yeah, it was a very relaxing afternoon, very enjoyable day, which the next one was basically all on the bus. We didn't walk the following day. And so we did a little bit of walk from the bus stop to El Puente, the famous Puente Orbigo, and made a stop to Astorga and to different places along the way. And well, I'll let Juan Carlos to tell us a little bit about what we did.
No hace falta. Good evening, my name is Juan Morales. My wife Suzette and I were the concierge for Wednesday, July 18th. And Wednesday was a very, very busy day. I'd like to go back for a minute to something that Efrain talked about it, because when we got back and looking toward the blessing that we had, one of the blessings in the case of my wife and I were the fact that we went to Lourdes before the Camino began. Why was that a blessing? Because we've been in Lourdes before, but we couldn't take the bath. We couldn't do the bath. Too many people in line, too many sick people. And this time we were able to do the bath. So to me that was just something out of this world, the fact that we were able, my wife and I, to do that. On Wednesday, July 18th, the day began by the walk of the Puente del Paso Honroso. People, just a gorgeous, beautiful 6th century bridge con 13 árculos. I mean, it's unbelievable, the beauty on that bridge. The day went on and on and on. I don't want to, get down to all the details. We made it to the city of Somos, where where we went to the Monasterio de San Julián de Samos. And to me, the blessing of having Father Christian and Father Paul celebrate Mass every day during the Camino. Every day we had Mass. Okay, that Mass to me was so It was just unbelievable what I felt in that monasterio and the mass we received. As I look back to the Camino, you know, I made a few notes here that I want to share with you. Our blessings, my wife Susan and I, what were they? The quality of the group, you know, to gather 31 people. It's so hard to have everyone get together, to have everyone work together, to have everyone go along together. This was the case. We had a few, you know, minor, but I mean, in general, it was a wonderful group. Having Father Christian and Paul, to me was one of the biggest blessing, and again, Mass every afternoon. By the time the day end, we had that Mass. The quality of the organization, the route, the way they were put together, the way they were set up, the way they were structured. I think Ignacio and the staff and the group did a hell of a job. The way we did that, they did that. The two Masses in Santiago. We got to Santiago on the 23rd. We had the Peregrino Mass with the bishop on the 24th Tuesday, and then the 25th is obviously at the Santiago. So the Cardinal gave us a Mass, and that Mass to me and to my wife meant a lot. And again, it was a long day. We ended up sleeping in Hotel Roma, and that was actually the only time we slept in one hotel for 3 nights. It was actually fairly good, and I couldn't tell you enough the blessing that we brought back from that trip, and how thankful we are to the ones that were there as part of the trip.
¿Qué cosa es eso de Gauría?
El Palacio de Obispo.
Palacio. She wants me to mention that at the Hotel Roma, I found a Cubanito working there. A very young Cubanito that just had been there for 4 years from Cuba. A very dedicated, respectful, professional person, but amazing that we found this young person in there at the hotel. So, yes.
Where did you sleep the other night when you did not sleep at the Hotel Roma?
We usually had each concierge had a responsibility for the hotel every night. So every night we slept in a hotel, except in Sarria, where we stayed at the Hotel Roma for 3 nights, and then in Santiago, where we stayed at the Parador for 3 nights too.
Right, but like in Burgos and Logroño, we were very lucky because the hotel was located centrally. Like it was like everybody loved Burgos. It was great. We were right there, and we were just walking, and we were walking right in the center of town. Logroño, same thing.
So lastly,
nice.
I'll tell you this, about 2 weeks ago, I was asked to share with some ladies where I live, they're doing the Camino next year, some of our experience, and they are staying in other places. We were very lucky that the plans included the type of hotels we had and the type of trips and routes that we follow throughout the whole Camino. Somebody else here? Yeah?
Yeah, a question to Father Christian for people who don't know him. Can you explain about your dia, for me a little bit, so that everyone has a taste of what that is?
About Fermin?
Yes.
Well,
We'll be here for 45 minutes.
you're already late. No. And so, we have a guide. So we have a local guide, a guide that's from actually from País Vasco, very proud Basque.
Sumatra.
Marraga from Camino Santiago, who's done the Camino already Ignaciano. He was one of the first ones to do the Camino Ignaciano, and I don't know how many times he's done the Camino Santiago.
15.
15. Yeah, 16 with us. So he knows it very well. Actually, he works along the way, and he's pretty much our staff sergeant. He's the one that keeps everyone on as much as he can on time, and moving at a pace. I'm saying we really kept the pace. Maybe one did, but
he knows the Camino. He is known to the people. He knows the Camino quite well.
he's a sheep.
The upside, the downside to some degree is that you're gonna be outside by 8:15 in the morning with the luggage. Which, when you look back now, you realize how important it was to be out there at 8:15. Okay? Sometimes it was a pain to, too early, too painful. But I tell you, he had a hell of a point. But sometimes his eyes and his face were not the friendly thing.
You mean that doesn't change over time, right?
Something worth saying for those who haven't done it and might be considering doing it. And you say, I can't walk 100 kilometers, I can't do 12 miles in a day. Ignacio and Fermin have worked out a tremendous scheme. Every day's walk was divided into 3 or 4 segments. 3 or 4 segments. There were 2 buses, one bus big enough for all of us, and a smaller bus. So what happened is we would all start on the first leg of this 3 or 4 leg trip for the day. But there was a cutoff point. If you didn't make it to the second segment by a particular time, you weren't going to walk the second one. Okay, you would get on the bus, and the bus would skip a segment, and depending on your condition, you could then get a head start on the 3rd segment, and people would catch up with you. So anybody can do it, okay? You don't have to be able to walk 12 miles a day, which I didn't walk any day because I was sick. But I walked every day, but not to full time. But anybody can do it. Okay?
Now, for me, when we started working in the morning, he would walk all the way up to the first person, and then walk back to the person in the back. He would do that the whole entire day. One day, I was walking on the middle of the road, which you're not supposed to. You should not do that. And, he got on my case. But most of the time, he was, strict about the things not to do, and that was the way it was.
He was the drill sergeant.
But the event for me, on the Camino 2 years ago, on the second day, he came to Jerry and myself and to tell us that he was taking his backpack and he was going home. That was 2 years ago. This year, it took 3 days. So he has improved. Okay? The 3rd day, he goes, I'm going home.
Oh, he did it again this
He
year?
did it again. He told me, I'm going home. It took 3 days.
He learned Cuban time. Okay, next day.
Gradual process. So we finished this day that was all on the bus really in Galicia. And we entered Galicia and we went to Severo, which is where one of the Eucharistic miracles in Galicia occurred. That even Reina Isabel had gone up there to visit. So that's also the highest point, the hardest point in the Camino in Galicia. And from there, literally it's downhill, although it really didn't feel that way. Because the next day, look at that sky, we had nice gray skies to accompany us all the way. And then, like I said, those smiles started to disappear.
Yeah.
And it just kept on being worried looks, looking back, like who's behind me, how much more do we have to go? I think that was the same question that everyone kept on asking me as I was going. Kind of for me, would go to the front and then work his way back, and I waited with the last and then moved my way forward. And everybody had the same question. How much longer? I mean, how much? We're only at 5 miles, we got 5 more to go. So that day, we began our 10-mile daily walks.
We did 13 that day.
Yeah, we did 13 on the first one. And so, it was a hard one. You felt it, and at least I know at least when I hit at 5 miles, that's when I start feeling, and at 10 miles, I definitely start feeling everything.
We should explain real quick, the reason why, in Santiago, when you start from there and walk all the way through, you get the certificate.
It starts to count.
The last 100 kilometers. And so we were at like a mile, like kilometer 113. So that's where we started, and that's where we walked all the way through.
And so we were worried. I checked the weather forecast and it said torrential rain the next 3 days. So immediately I went to the wonderful town of Sarria, which nobody took a picture of apparently. And I bought myself the poncho, the reindeer, and all that. It didn't rain the whole time. So, and so let's hear from our consorte. Who,
Father Christian said, one day, one is a concert or
Consorte. That's consorte, so they named it consorte. And the consorte is the one that wears the jacket and stays in the back.
holding everybody. First of all,
Yeah, I had
how can I put it, miracles happen or?
good things and the Camino. Definitely recommend it for everybody to do one Camino.
One Camino. It's, I don't know if you would do it again, but definitely.
Definitely do it if you haven't done it.
And if you haven't traveled with Ignacio Abella travel, whoa,
Detail to the T.
a year's worth of work.
To the last second.
Too much.
In fact, you don't have to go on the Camino, just read the book and you
Read the book and you're there. It's unbelievable.
But just to talk a little bit about, and tonight while you were giving your homily, you said something about how timing, not to make decisions in moments of desolation, but to make decisions when you feel that God is with you, correct?
Right.
So before we left on the Camino, we've been in business for 28 years, and my husband was already complaining the last 2, like we need to do something, because this is becoming really hard. We own a real estate company. So right before we left on the Camino, and I had always heard, your life before the Camino and your life after the Camino changed. Boy, has it changed. So we left on this trip for the better, but before we left with this, what would I call it? Decision to be made. And we didn't make the decision, we just went on it, and we put everything in
No, we
God's-
were asked, how are you gonna make the decision? And we said, well, God will make it for us. Simple as that.
And as we were walking and going to mass every day and, reflecting, and Father Paul was very influential in our decision. And we went through this but we knew along the way that God was with us every step of the way. We weren't worrying about what was gonna happen when we came back. Because we knew that when we came back, we were gonna make the right decision. Because God had just given us so many signs throughout this whole trip. And sure enough, we came back, and on the 15th of August, Our Lady's Feast Day, the Assumption, we signed our merger with another company,
Big real estate
which
company.
is something that,
God sent.
it was like, do we do this, or it was the right time, it was the right decision. But I can tell you that probably we would have not made this decision if we had not gone on this trip. Because it was God's will, and I can't thank God enough for everything that's
Meant to
happened
be.
since then.
Plus other miracles that happened, but anyway.
Along the way, but
If no one has done the Camino, this is all the GPS marking along the Camino.
A little arrow.
you can't get
And
lost.
You cannot get lost.
Just follow that. And it was very interesting, the whole Camino, that you see people from all over the world, all denominations. It doesn't have to be
Orlando was
Catholic or Christian.
doing like a,
That was-
We did a survey the
My
whole
survey
trip.
was like, yeah, where are you from?
to every single person that was walking along
Where
the
are you
way.
from?
Guapo,
And I would say guapa to everybody, guapa, everybody is guapa. And then then they would ask me, oh, where are you from? Oh, from Orlando, from Miami, Cuban American from US.
So it was very, very interesting, very, definitely recommended. If you haven't done it, to do it.
One thing we could say is, once we got into Galicia is beautiful. There's no way to describe it. It's so beautiful.
Was it 100,000?
That's 100.
Unbelievable scenery that we had, that we
Can
walked.
you explain a little bit about that, where we're standing right there?
Which one?
The one in the middle.
The one in the middle?
Yeah,
Yeah. That was
the 100, that was
the 100 kilometers.
No?
Yeah, they have the number of miles starting from like 760
So that
kilometers
was like a
to.
very important point when we got there.
Yeah, 100.
So I hear you're putting the rocks on top of them.
And
people-
people along the way, I mean, everybody walks and brings their own intentions, praying for different people. I mean, I was praying throughout this trip for a friend who was very ill, and unfortunately she passed away last night. Mary Roque, I was praying tonight for her. So along the way, you place little rocks and you pray for your intentions.
And you walk for all places. This is like little forests that you would walk in between, and the temperature would go down like 10 degrees. And if you're on the open field, it was very, very, very hot. Hills up and down, rocks, it's very, very nice.
Obviously, the food is excellent at night, terrific, and lunch too, yeah, absolutely, you cannot go wrong. What else, Yanita?
Oh yeah, since you mentioned the arrow and the shell,
Yep.
it's worth saying, this stuck in my mind from the guide. This is, some Spaniard had the idea of doing this, putting the arrows so people could take this walk. You should know that there are like 37 other walks from Spain that end in Santiago.
Yes.
But this is the oldest one, it starts in France. But this is the interesting part. He said, hey, you can walk this thing from Moscow to here. So there are people that have put arrows, obviously other places on earth, to get you to this point. And the Camino de Santiago is on the top 3 list of pilgrimages. Jerusalem, Rome, and Santiago de Compostela. And so other people have taken up that idea, and they're now allowing you, from wherever you live, eventually it will be the whole world, to get to this place.
And funny, everyone since we came back, that we call the Camino de Santiago, everybody wants to know, everybody sees my little bracelet here, one Camino. And so some people, what is it? We tell them, watch the movie, The Way. That's a good starting point for them. And then if they want to, like one person, we give them one of our booklets. Here, take a look at it.
And I want to get it back. As he gives things away later on.
Also, Camino de Santiago, Fermín, todos, Ignacio, and guys, it's not Camino de Santiago, it's Camino a Santiago. Why? Porque Santiago never walked the Camino. Santiago, I believe, arrived muerto a España, okay? And was, I guess, put in Santiago. So I guess you can give credit to Ignacio de Loyola because he really walked the Camino Ignaciano from Loyola to Marruecos. More power to Ignacio.
Any questions today?
Sí,
Pero, ya familia, acuéstate a dormir, ¿no?
el tipo de camino es más de tierra o de cemento, ¿cómo se
De todo,
compara?
de todo. De todo. You have cement, you
Más o
have
menos,
you're walking,
Galicia así.
no.
Altas y bajas también.
Altas y bajas,
Altas y bajas.
montañas, piedras. This is where the walking sticks are very beneficial, very light. You do need walking down and walking up, and good boots. I made it a point that, like 6 months ago, I'm gonna walk el Camino a Santiago. I am not going La Guagua Santiago, okay? And so I researched real good boots, real comfortable, and socks, the most important thing. And the sticks will help you, for sure. And you gotta get mentally, physically, and spiritually in shape.
I think we were the concierge the next day too, but.
Yeah, we had,
Day 2.
double duty de consorte.
Okay, next day.
Next day? All right.
And so, along the way, I mean, this is pretty much the paisaje. This was what we saw. There were forested areas, some gravel trails. Sometimes it was paved. Across the bridges, past different places. I have to say that personally, this was harder than the Camino Ignaciano. I think it was harder, because when we said that Camino Ignaciano was llano, it was. This was not. This was going up and down, really. This is Palas del Rey, where we went to Arswas was one of the stops, and it was an interesting place, you know, as we're walking. Well, we got a little lost when I remember we crossed this bridge, as we thought that that was where lunch was. We were still about 20 minutes away walking from where, allá, es allá, nada más de cuestica, yeah. 20 minutes away, allá, going uphill. I mean, so when we finally got in here, I think I devoured 2 octopuses myself, 2 octopuses myself, but that was una
pulpería.
La pulpería.
This was the third day.
This was, yeah, the third day of walking. Who was the
We
second
were
day?
walking, and we did,
You were on this one.
and we did almost 20 miles that day.
Yeah, that was a hard one.
Which we did about half of them, and then we had the lunch, la pulpería. And
That was a long
and then
day.
the other half was the second day was the other half, which was almost 10 miles. But there, it did rain on us, a little
It was a
bit.
shower, yeah.
A little bit of a shower, but it wasn't.
Esa señora ahí
To
que
give
está
a
como ofreciendo
little longer answer to your question, because this is something that I, you know, I don't want to say it impacted me, but it was something I learned, okay? And it's obvious. We went by a lot of little towns,
Yeah.
which were essentially deserted. The tower on the church, you know, just like we know as Catholics, was the highest point in the town. There were 20 or 30 or 40 houses around it, most of them were for rent or sold houses. And there was clean, very clean. Everything was very clean. The whole trip was very clean, including those towns. And there was a place to buy goodies and a place to eat. And that was it, because this was all agricultural country. And it's all done by machines today, and there's nobody living there anymore. They're just towns, medieval towns that are just standing in time there.
Yeah, so the Camino brings, economic viability to those towns.
300,000 people a year.
Yeah, where in the 1980s, Fermin told us 1 year there was only 18 people that actually did the whole Camino, that actually got the certificate.
It is a little commercialized, but still, it's fine. It's not out of control.
It's not under control, it's not.
Next day. Lo que hace esa señora es esos son castaños que está haciendo.
You have a big pot, the sock about 10 feet, and the other, he takes them out, and the lady, look like a grandmother, cuts them up, a little olive oil, salt.
Delicious. So that was day 3, I think, of the walk. Day 4, we were entering, and more of the same as we were going in. I remember that they pulled my Achilles tendon by then, so I was feeling a lot of pain that day. And so we had our conserjes going on, and we had Don Ogden, who's not here, who's probably watching.
So this is Gilas Kunze and Consuelo, que es española de Salamanca.
They're from Washington, D.C.
Nos cuenta un poco acerca de la experiencia de ser concierge en el camino.
Como no, aquí disfrutando de la comida española, un poco de empanada, un poco de manchego. Pero yo en realidad quería darle las gracias a todos ustedes y hacer una propuesta de que en realidad lo que debemos hacer es hacer una nominación, una cosa así como un Emmy nominations para los mejores del camino. Número 1, Ignacio Abella. Número 2, Carlos y Alicia. Concierge. Porque los más preocupados, siempre atentos, ayudando a los otros. Número 1. Best Supporting Actor, Ignacio Abella. Gracias a él mucha gente salió adelante, su buen humor, su buen carácter, su estamina. El tipo es la candela. Y luego, Joseba, el mejor bigote del mundo, el mejor marido del mundo, el mejor abuelo del mundo. Preso número 1. Vuelves a hacer el Camino de Santiago. Así que muchos saludos a todos, los mejores deseos y que la pasen bien en esta reunión.
conserje for that day, Gil is a physician in Washington, muy amigo de la agrupación, and I think they had a hell of a time.
So between Don Clairauten and Hilden Consuelo Sunska, we made it to Pedruso, which is basically the airport just outside of Santiago de Compostela. And those of you who flew out, you remember it took, I think, the taxi maybe 10 minutes to drive, what took us about 4 or 5 hours to walk. And so that brings us to the end. So when we, from Pedruso, we started walking until we finally went to Monte de Gozo, and we finally see Santiago in the distance in there. We see the towers of the cathedral right here. And we had a moment there of thanksgiving, of prayer, as we marched victoriously for another about an hour and a half to get to here. And we concluded with our Mass at the Jesuit College in Santiago. And, well, of course, in front of that palatial basilica and festivities. So,
Can you point to the American couple that joined us on this trip?
To Don and Claire.
Okay, from Washington also. He got a lesson about Cuban society. He never got a word in, and when he did, he would let us know. This is the first time I've spoken to you in 3 days. Okay? Now listen to me. Because we wouldn't get a chance to put a word in sideways.
Father, or Ignacio, how easy or how difficult it was to get the time for the Mass?
The Masses have worked out with
do they have Masses?
They were just for us. There were private Masses. So
right, but I mean,
most of the places
I imagine there are other groups
sometimes
that also want to have Mass. So did you have difficulty with that?
There's just some places where, like for example, in Roncesvalles, we did the actual Mass of the regular one because it coincided with the time we needed. And in 2 other places, it coincided with the times that we needed, so we just joined the regular Mass. Other than that, we had the churches to ourselves.
I mean, we began planning this in the summer of 2017. And, things like the Mass, we had a logistic problem, like Carlos has said, on the Sunday in Logroño, they wanted to see the Football Mundial, and so, it was. And for example, I want to recognize my hero who designed our camisetas. So stand up. Wow. Okay, so in next Camino we'll have calzoncillos too.
To answer your question, sadly, many of those churches are essentially closed in these little towns. So all you need to do is get the key of the person that takes care of it. It's a priest that comes by, every so often. But somebody opens it, so that's why it was not hard to get,
So we arrived in Santiago on Monday. The celebration was on Wednesday. So we had basically Tuesday all day free. And I know that Efrain and Carlos and the wife went to see some Father Rey de Castro family members. And then on Wednesday, we went to the cathedral. Our hotel was right here, que es el Parador. So if you're going to go to Santiago de Compostela, the place to stay is el Parador. There's no place else.
Yeah, Santiago is totally
Okay.
right.
It's expensive, but it's worth it. The best view, okay? Best view. Best view. Thank you.
Wait a minute, how long was the whole thing?
We start walking on a Sunday until the following Wednesday.
10 days.
10 days, okay? Okay, so here is Don and Claire, our farewell lunch. And obviously, Father Paul Rourke, and the famous Fermin right here. Okay, Lourdes.
What I would like to share is 2 things. It's so nice that we are able to share this with the people that already did the other Camino, because it kind of must make you a little bit nostalgic, right? Just the good feelings that we had. It was really nice. It's so nice for all of you, who are here that have never done that Camino or this Camino or the other, to take the time to listen to all of us, all excited about what we did and where we went and the beautiful things. Like Ileana has said, everybody goes with something, with an intention. You know, nobody is really telling anybody else the intention, but we all have our intention. And I think as the days go by and the things begin to happen and you begin to know the people and you begin to share with them and you begin to share the good, the things that hurt, the things that are wonderful, you know, and make the area, the place, the walk, you know, spiritual if you wanted to. Like Yolma and I, one day we did the rosary, another day we were sharing things, another day listening to music. There was another lady that is not here today. We started putting music from the 80s while we were walking. So, you know, it's like fun, it's like nice, it's you know, it really gets, you know, to make something special inside. But, you know, for everybody, it was different. So, you know, I really want to thank you because I say we get all excited, you know, but it's late. I'm sorry.
Okay.
But I got to say that the person to blame for this Camino is, raise your hand. Come on, Bob.
Bob.
Okay? Because nobody was talking about the Camino. And Ignacio said, we have to, you know, plan in the future. You know, maybe in 22. And he said, but why wait so long? And this guy that doesn't need too much, he got into it right away. So, you know.
I wanted to recognize Joe Mojena, Joe, raise your hand, and Santiago, raise your hand. Okay, so Joe and Santiago were our, shall we call it, single Caminantes, and they did a great job too. So, any questions?
Aquí.
Dime.
¿Cuándo vemos al santo?
Okay, so the tradition is that when you get to Santiago, you embrace El Santo. Okay, and okay, a lot of us embrace El Santo. Yo lo he embrasado ya varias veces. Yo lo he embrasado, eso es tremendo España.
Abrazado.
I want to make sure we recognize people that never, okay, Efraín was saying that we had two buses, a big bus, Greyhound, and a small bus que yo cariñosamente le llamo León Medical Center bus. Okay, so people that never went to the León Medical Center bus always were walking. Father Christian, Marco Casanova, Orlando mi hermano, Carlos, Joe Diaz, I mean those are the people, Carlos, I mean the people that never went to the bus. Don and Claire and Gil and Consuelo. Those people never went to the bus.
One thing we noticed that on the last day in La Catedral at the Mass, I had the privilege, I was invited to celebrate with the bishop, but we didn't plan on that at all, it was a total casualidad. And so as I was processing, you can tell who were the ones who had just finished the walk that day, because as going to communion, everybody was going like this. Because I was also walking like that, and when I see stairs, I go, oh no, escalera otra vez. I remember my mom, because she was the same thing. But yeah, it definitely left a mark for days after.
So our love for Caminos with Father Christian and myself started like 6 years ago in Rome over a cigar Sunday night, the weekend that that John Paul II and John 23 fueron canonizados. And we met, we hooked up, and we did Camino Ignaciano in 2016, Camino de Santiago in 2018, and then what is next?
Right.
All right, so what is next? Any other questions?
Yo sé cuál es next.
¿Cuál?
Camino Javierano.
¿Dónde es ese?
Por allá, por todo el Liz. Hay que ir a Japón.
Okay, you're in charge.
El Padre, el Hijo y el Espíritu Santo. Ruega por nosotros, bienaventurado Santiago, para que seamos dignos de la presencia de Jesucristo. Acepta, Señor, las súplicas que te dirigimos por medio de tu apóstol Santiago, patrono de España, y haz que la peregrinación a su sepulcro, faro de unidad cristiana, nos disponga a recorrer juntos el camino que conduce a la gloria eterna por Jesucristo nuestro Señor.
Amén.
Gloria al Padre, al Hijo y al Espíritu Santo.
Como era en el principio, ahora y siempre, por los siglos de los siglos. Amén.
En el nombre del Padre, del Hijo y del Espíritu
We
Santo.
want to thank Eric for all the food and the drinks.